He just brought Lin Yan into this world when that man ran off with every last penny of the Lin family's savings, leaving him without even a single winter coat to keep out the bitter cold. The folks in Xiangyang village thought he'd cry and begged that man to return. To their surprise, he burned all of the man's belongings that very same day, showing absolutely no lingering regret. When the man left, he had kicked open the delivery room door, thrown down 100 yuan, and told him to buy Lin Yan some food if the baby got hungry. He claimed he was leaving to enjoy life with his mistress, leaving Lin Xuke to fend for himself. Holding baby Lin Yan, who was crying so hard he could barely breathe, he sat on the freezing earthen bed without shedding a single tear. He only reached under his pillow to touch a silver bracelet. It was given to him by his mother on her deathbed, who said it could ward off misfortune or be sold for cash if needed. Others thought he would keep it as a precious keepsake. But early the next morning, Ling Zhuhe stepped out the door with Lin Yan in his arms, heading straight for the Feng Lashan gold shop in town. He pawned the bracelet for 30,000 yuan. Clutching the cash, Lin Xuke turned around and walked right into the rural credit cooperative next door. He deposited all 30,000 yuan into his card. Carrying Lin Yan, he walked all the way back to Xiangyang village, step by step. When the villagers heard about this, they all said Lin Saikui had truly lost his mind. But no one knew that this 30,000 yuan represented his ultimate do-or-die resolve. In the blink of an eye, it was the 5th day since the man had left. That afternoon, just as Lin Yan had fallen asleep in Lin Suhe's arms, the phone on the table suddenly began to ring loudly. Lin Suhe reached out and picked up the receiver. On the other end of the line came the man's loud, vulgar swearing, punctuated by the flirtatious giggles of his mistress. Lin Suhe, let me tell you something. I'm out here having the time of my life, so don't you dare cause any trouble for me. Hurry up and rent out the land around the ancestral house and wire all the money straight to me. Ling Suke held the receiver, not uttering a single word. He just listened in silence, the man waiting on the line for a full 10 minutes. Seeing that there was absolutely no response from his end, he slammed the phone down in fury. A rapid, cold beeping of the busy signal came through the receiver. Only then did Lin Suhe slowly put the phone back down. He had stifled Lin Yan for a lifetime. She stood up, walked straight out the door, and headed directly toward the Xiangyang Village Committee office. Inside, the village committee officials were in the middle of a meeting. They all froze in shock when they saw Lin Suhe walk in.
教授即将库克嘎老和狐火之术玩住了一遍。
Su, hey, what brings you here? Is this about that good-for-no-nothing husband of yours again? Don't worry, the Xiangyang Village Committee will definitely stand up for you. Lin Suhe didn't sit down. I'm not here to ask you to stand up for me. I'm here to get something done. She handed him a sheet of paper.
教授提交 I need you to do me a favor.
I want to transfer a household registration.
脚趾枪会全二十
Whose registration do you want to transfer? Ling Suhe replied calmly. Remove Wang Jingjun's name from my family's household registration.
教师将嫁出的图系 修和 有好的心思这书
Every married couple fights. There's no couple that doesn't argue. Ling Luka cut him off instantly, without a single shred of hesitation. I've made up my mind. Just do it according to the rules, please. Issue whatever certificates I need. Seeing how absolutely determined she was, and that all her paperwork was indeed in order, the Xiangyang Village Committee had no choice but to issue the certificate as requested. Once it was stamped, Lin Sikray took the paper bearing the official red seal, turned around, and headed straight for the Xiangyang Town Police Station. By that very afternoon, she had completely removed Wang Jingjun's name from her family's household registration book. With that taken care of, Ling Suhe returned to the village. She dragged out every single item Wang Jingjun had left at the old Lin family house, piled them in the courtyard, and set them all ablaze, burning them to ashes. This time she took things much further than before. Everyone in the village saw it, and everyone understood. Ling Qiu was truly and completely cutting ties with Wang Jingjun this time. Soon, the gossips of Xiaoning village began wagging their tongues. Shu Yu is way too ruthless, they muttered. Even after a breakup, they were husband and wife once. How can she be so cold-blooded? They whispered that she must have had someone else on her mind all along. Otherwise, how could she have walked away so decisively? They mocked how a lone woman like her could act so tough with a kid in tow, saying she's bound to suffer for it sooner or later. All these nasty rumors drifted right into Ling Zikui's ears. But she acted as if she hadn't heard a single word. She kept taking care of Lin Yan just the same, eating her meals when it was time to eat, and keeping her life quiet and peaceful. She didn't let a single wave disrupt her peace. But nobody could have guessed this was only her first step to burning all her bridges. An even more ruthless move was yet to come. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed since Wang Jinjun left. Early that morning, long before the sun was even up,
Ling, live for got out of bed.
she dug out the deed to the Lin family's old house, along with all the land certificates. She wrapped them up tightly and hid them close to her body. After nursing baby Ling Yan until the little one was full,
She bundled her baby up warm and held the child tight in her arms.
she locked the front door and headed straight for the town. She went to find a merchant she had contacted beforehand. The merchant was an outsider who had come to town to run a grain and oil business. He was looking for a place to set up shop. Lenka's house was in a prime location with spacious yard right on the main street. He had sent people to ask about it several times before, but Lei Zhu had never agreed. But this time, she was the one who came looking for him. The shop owner's name was Du, an honest and decent man. The moment he saw Lin Zuraf, he quickly welcomed her inside.
Ling Suke didn't beat around the bush.
She slammed the property deed right onto the table. Lu Dou, I'm selling this house to you. Lu Doufu was both shocked and thrilled. He quickly asked, Sister, how much do you want for it? Before this, the Xiangyang Village Street Office had valued the house at 350,000. It has a prime location and a huge yard, and it even has a storefront right on the street. It's perfect for running a business. So, sister, how much are we talking? 270,000. Lin Sickles nodded, her voice flat, without a single hint of emotion. Yes, 270,000. But I only have one condition. We sign the contract today. You transfer the money today, and we hand over the house. Today, the moment the money hits my account, I will give you the keys immediately. Du Tufu was absolutely ecstatic. This was a total windfall. A gift straight from the heavens. A massive street-front property. A house easily worth 350,000 yuan, and he was getting it for only 270,000. Plus, she was handing over the keys the very same day. He would be a fool not to take advantage of this. Terrified that Lin Saiko might back out, he immediately found Chen Hao, a local acquaintance, to draft up the contract on the spot. Both parties signed their names, pressed their thumbprints, and Du Tufu transferred the 270,000 yuan into Lin Suka's account right then and there. Not a single penny short. The moment Lin Suka received the bank's transaction text, she handed the keys and the property deed straight to Li Defu. She uttered only one cold sentence. From this moment on, this house has absolutely nothing to do with me, Lin Zhu here, ever again. With that, she turned and walked away, never once looking back at the home she had lived in for 5 years. The home she had poured her heart into, decorating and filling bit by bit after she married in. The home where she had given birth, gone through postpartum recovery, and eventually burned every single one of her husband's belongings. She didn't even turn her head, sitting away from the village, one deliberate stride at a time. By that afternoon, everyone on the streets of Shanyang Village knew she was out of her mind. Ling Suke had completely lost her mind. That was the only thought in everyone's head. A perfectly good street-front property, market valued at 350,000 yuan, and she practically gave it away for just 270,000. She had literally thrown away 80,000 yuan for nothing. Just 10 days after giving birth to Lin Yan, she sold the house and left with her baby in her arms. If that isn't crazy, then what is? The elders in the streets of Xiangyang Village shook their heads and sighed, saying she was a perfectly fine woman, completely broken by her husband. She didn't even want her home anymore. They muttered that a woman like her, carrying her newborn baby, how could she possibly survive without a house? And when that bastard Wang Jinkyun came back and found out, he was bound to raise hell. But Jua didn't care at all about what the villagers said. She held Ling Nan close and got onto the bus to the county seat. As the bus started moving, she pulled aside the window curtain and took one last look at the village. There wasn't a trace of regret in her eyes, only sheer relief. Until that moment, no one in the village realized that nothing Ling Zouhui did was an impulsive whim, much less her being driven mad by a broken heart. She had already seen through everything when she was 7 months pregnant. And she had already started setting her trap back then. That was 6 months ago. Xia's belly was already as huge as an overturned wok. Walking was a struggle. Even rolling over in bed at night was hard. During that time, Wang Jinkyun came home late and left early every day, always reeking of alcohol. The second he got home, he'd pass out, without saying a single word to her. Even the cash they kept in the Lin family's old house was slowly disappearing. At first, he claimed he was going to work in town to make money and save up for Lin Nan's baby formula. Suli bet in him, Hobie thanked him, Fiti few. She washed his clothes, cooked light meals, and waited for him to come home.
我们万军中错是门云领笑话，你我能来做何？
Back then, he was honest and down to earth. About a few words, but always hardworking. Ling Shuoyi and Ling Yang didn't approve of the marriage at first. The Wang family had nothing to their name, with only an elderly mother and zero financial backing. But Jua saw that he was down to earth and treated her well. He was incredibly devoted to Wang Zi, kicking the long way around on rainy days just to pick her up and bring her home safely. Whenever she fell ill, he would carry her on his back through the night to the town clinic. When Wang Ximi became bedridden, he took care of her every need, even cleaning her bedpan, without a single word of complaint. Lin Ju had felt that a man like this was someone she could truly rely on. So, ignoring the fierce opposition from Lin Shuoyi and Lin Yuang, she married him. During the first 2 years of their marriage, life was indeed peaceful and stable. The two of them farmed the land together, tended to their yard together, and saved up money together. Rusime treated Lin Suhe with even more love than if she were her own daughter, never letting her suffer a single grievance, and never letting her do any heavy labor. Whenever there was any good food in the house, she would always make sure Sihu got it first. Ling Suke, in turn, loved and respected Wang Zimei just like her own mother, Ling Yuang. But as the family's days went on, disaster struck when Wang Zimei was diagnosed with a severe illness. To pay for Wang Zimei's medical treatments, all the savings their family had painstakingly scraped together were completely wiped out, and they had to borrow heavily from relatives and friends. During that time, Wang Zhenjun worked himself to the bone like a madman to earn money. He moved bricks at construction sites by day and guarded warehouses for others by night, sleeping only 3 to 4 hours a day, until he became skin and bones, barely recognizable. Lai Zhuhu saw all of this, and her heart ached for him. Even with her heavily pregnant belly, she still washed his clothes, cooked his meals, and took care of Wang Ximi. But in the end, Wang Ximi still passed away. On her deathbed, Wang Ximi held both of their hands, placing Lin Zhu's hand into Wang Zhenjun's. Zhenjun, you must treat Lin Zhu well. Never let her suffer or feel wronged. Live your lives well, and stay on the right path. I'll be watching over you from heaven. But after Wang Ximei passed away, he changed completely. He started staying out all night, never coming home, falling in with a crowd of gamblers from Zanyang village. At first, it was just small-time play, winning $1 or $2. He told Ling Zhuge that this money came easy, and that they could pay off their debts sooner. Ling Zhuhe tried to reason with him, warning him that gambling was a dead end, and that the house always wins. But he wouldn't listen to a single word. He snapped back, telling her a woman like her didn't know anything. He was already completely blinded by the thrill of winning. He truly believed he could strike it rich overnight.
Yong Jianzhong always saw that if his luck just turned one more time,
If he could just win back that pile of cash on the table, he'd be able to clear all his debts and finally give Lin Xiaohe and their unborn child, Lin Yan, a good life. But little did he know, a casino is never a place to make a comeback. It's a trap that eats people alive. The house had set a trap for him long ago. First, they baited him with a few sweet wins, before slowly, inch by inch, dragging him into an inescapable abyss like a prey being strangled to death. Late that night, Wang Zhengjun 问到一点. After that, there was only a dead silence. Ling Zhuhe sat in the main room, watching the flickering oil lamp until dawn. The next morning, Wang Zhenju stumbled through the front door, reeking of cheap alcohol and stale cigarettes. Without even taking off his shoes, he collapsed onto the bed like a sack of bricks and passed out cold. His unlocked phone lay right there beside his pillow, its screen glowing in the dark. The light from the screen felt painfully bright in the dimly lit room. With trembling hands, Lin Suhel picked up the phone, her fingers gripping the edges so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The moment she woke, the screen. She felt a sudden wave of icy dread wash over her from head to toe, making her entire body shiver. The phone was packed with filthy messages from his gambling buddies, along with endless, haunting demands from loan sharks. And buried beneath that pile of filthy messages, there was actually a woman named Mary. Their sickeningly, flirtatious texts crawled across the screen like maggots, sinking Lin Shu's eyes. As she scrolled through them line by line, the spark of hope in her heart slowly died out until nothing was left but cold, lifeless ash. He hadn't been working for a long time. He had thrown his entire life into the casino, losing everything and going completely out of his mind. He gambled away his very last shred of humanity. First, he squandered every single penny of the hard-earned money her family made from farming their land. Then, he snatched away the money saved for baby Lin Mian's formula, and even the life-saving money meant for Lin Zhuhe's postpartum recovery. In the end, While Xu Hu was fast asleep, he went even further. He sneaked out and took the only tool they had to make a living in the yard. Their Dongfang Hong tractor. The one thing keeping the entire family afloat, and sold it off for dirt cheap, just to use as another gambling chip. In this man's eyes, this home was no longer a safe haven to protect them from the storm, but just a worthless wreck he could pawn off whenever he pleased. Ling Suke stared dead-eyed at the man snoring like thunder on the bed, feeling a wave of intense, gut-wrenching disgust. She didn't cry, she didn't scream, but in that very moment, she heard the sound of something deep inside her completely shattering. Whatever love they had as husband and wife in this life was now nothing but cold, dead ashes. They had sold off all their farm cattle, throwing every last penny into the bottomless pit of the casino. And that wasn't even the worst of it. He had also gone to loan sharks behind her back, piling up a debt that, with interest, came to over 200,000 yuan. His name was signed on the IOUs, stamped with his own thumbprint. But under the guarantor section, he had written her name, Lin Suhe. Then, there were his chat logs with a woman named Mary. He wrote that once Lin Yan was born, he would run off with all the money and go live the sweet life with Mary in the city. He dumped this whole disastrous mess on Sihei's shoulders. After all, she would have just given birth, meaning she and the baby wouldn't be able to run away. The loan sharks would definitely come after her first. He figured he'd just wait until she paid off all his debts, and then he'd crawl back and go right back to living his easy life.
Yu He clutched the phone.
Her entire body trembling with rage. Inside her womb, baby Lin Yan seemed to feel her mother's distress and gave her a sharp, sudden kick. That kick snapped her back to reality instantly. She didn't shed a single tear. She didn't make a scene, nor did she wake Wang Jianjun up to confront him. Instead, she silently slipped the phone back where it belonged. But not before she copied his call logs, text messages, and the IOUs. She forwarded all the photos to her own phone, deleted the transfer history, and locked his phone, leaving it exactly where it was. From that day on, Link's Yu changed completely. On the surface, she was still that quiet, submissive wife, cooking, doing laundry, and cleaning the house for Wang Jinjun. Even when he threw tantrums, she never talked back. When he stayed out all night, she didn't ask a single question. Everyone in Saiyang village praised her, telling Wang Jianjun how lucky he was to have such a good wife. So devoted and sensible. But nobody knew that Lin Xu's heart had already gone completely cold. Every single day she kept a secret ledger, tracking exactly how much money Wang Jianju had borrowed and how much he had lost at the gambling tables. She listened closely every day, eavesdropping on his phone calls with his gambling buddies and his desperate negotiations with the loan sharks. She secretly used a voice recorder she had prepared long ago, capturing every single word he said about his gambling debts. She snapped photos of every IOU he signed and stored them away. She even made a secret trip to town to get legal advice from Chen Hao. Gambling debts are not considered joint marital debts. As long as she could produce proof, she was safe. Chen Hao told her that the law was her ultimate shield. As long as you can prove that those 200,000 yuan of gambling debts never put food on your table and were never spent on baby Lin Yan's swaddling clothes, then you are legally in the clear. As long as I can hold on to this property deed, this dilapidated old house is still my only way out. My only fallback. But Chen Hao didn't understand. The law can stop the authorities, but it can't stop a desperate, bloodshot-eyed gambler, and it certainly can't block the bloody steel pipes of loan sharks.
让建军还是刚坑普利马。
On that gambling table, he didn't just lose money, he lost the very last shred of his humanity. When those ruthless creditors show up at my door, they won't care about legal documents or files. They will only tear my entire life to pieces. I'm just a mother who barely survived childbirth, and I can't protect the breastfeeding baby in my arms on my own. That's why I can't just sit and wait. And I certainly can't run and hide. Before Wang Junjun ever tries to crawl his way back, I'm going to personally cut off his every escape route. I'll take the very ancestral property he relies on for survival and turn it into a death trap of his own making. The purge starts right now. He wants to dump his mess on me? In his dreams. When he finally drags himself back, all he'll find is a ghost town and the absolute fury of his creditors. I've kept track of every single time that bastard screwed me over. This time, I will make him choke on his own bitter harvest. With interest. So, when Wenjun kicked open the delivery room door, threw down 100 yuan, and snatched every penny of their savings, Ling Suhel didn't feel a single shred of surprise. If anything, she felt a wave of relief. He had finally thrown away his last scrap of humanity. It had finally shown his true, ugly colors, which meant She didn't have to play pretend anymore. She no longer had to act like the submissive, dutiful wife. She burned all his belongings. She pawned the bracelet Wang Qimi left behind. She removed him from the family registry. She sold her own house. To that way, step by step, everything fell perfectly into her plan. The folks in Xi'an village said she'd gone mad. They called her cold and heartless. But they had no idea this wasn't madness. It was absolute clarity. She wasn't being heartless. She was carving out a path of survival for herself and Lin Yan. She knew the money Wang Zhenjun ran off with would eventually run dry. Once he hit rock bottom, he would inevitably crawl back to her, and all she had to do was lay out the perfect trap and wait for him to walk right into it. The wind in this county town bites even harder than the cold back in Sangyan village. I pulled the little red floral blanket tighter around my baby. Lin Nan was fast asleep, completely unaware that her gambler of a father had already dragged himself into the gutter. The white plaster of this motel wall is peeling and scattering all over the floor, but to my baby and me, it is our very first safe haven. Under the dim yellow glow of the hanging bulb, I stare at this tiny space, and the resolve never to look back is driven deep into my heart, once and for all. First thing the next morning, I carried my baby through every narrow alley of the old town. Since I was a kid, I grew up working the fields alongside my parents. Which wheat yields the most flour? Which rapiste oil has the richest, deepest aroma? I can smell it with my eyes closed. I know exactly how deep the waters are in this county town's grain and oil trade, but my life, Ling Jika's life, is a hell of a lot tougher. For 3 whole days, I've been scheming and calculating in every alleyway, pacing like a restless abacus. I have to see through the tricks of every single scale and read the hidden motives in every regular customer's eyes. Finally, at the entrance of an old residential alley, I locked my eyes on a 2-story building. Downstairs, a grain shop. Upstairs, a home. The towering walls of the backyard can block out the wind and rain and hide my deadly intent. I personally ripped down that rickety old sign. From this moment on, there is no longer a weak, submissive peasant wife for anyone to push around. There is only the owner of this no turning back grain and oil shop. This shop is the ultimate shield I will build for my daughter. The 270,000 yuan from selling the house sits heavy in my bag. That is the blood money I dragged out of that hellhole, Shenyan village. On the 12th day since Wang Jingjun vanished into thin air, I sat at a battered wooden table in the county's old town and signed the deed for this shop with my own hands. As the owner counted the money, his withered fingers rubbed against the cash with greed, making a soft, rustling sound. It sounded just like my shattered past. I watched the red stamp press onto the black and white contract, but my heart was incredibly cold and incredibly calm. The moment the deal was finalized, I didn't fix the doors or windows. I didn't even stock up on grain. Instead, I hired the toughest craftsman in town and had him carve a lacquered wooden plaque, black background, gold lettering. The moment those 3 words, "No turning back," were hung high above the entrance, the crowd on the old street stopped dead in their tracks. They stared at me like I was a lunatic. They said business is all about harmony brings wealth, and asked who on earth would choose a name like that. I didn't bother to explain, because only I know. The very second I set fire to my old home, nothing was left behind me but scorched earth. For me, there is no turning back. To plant my roots in the treacherous depths of this county town, doing it alone as a single woman wasn't going to cut it. I went to the labor market and camped out for 3 days. I ignored those slick, smooth-talking shop boys, choosing instead 2 rough-handed, middle-aged women with humility and resilience hidden in their eyes. Their families were struggling, so they valued their lives, and they knew exactly how to hold on to a job for dear life. Besides them, I paid top dollar to hire 2 straight-backed, skilled fighters with ruthless eyes. In this dog-eat-dog marketplace, having food isn't enough. You need a blade to protect that food. With high walls and deep barriers, we build our fortress on honesty. I ran my hand over the cold sign, watching my daughter take her first toddling steps in the courtyard. Wang Tegu, you better die out there. Don't you ever come back, because the words, "no turning back," are the gravestone I prepared for you. On this ruthless, cutthroat old street of the county town, the 3 gold characters of No Turning Back are a banner I, Lin Su, nailed down at the cost of half my life. 4 workers, 4 lives, tightly bound to this shop by me. I pay them a full 30% above the market rate. Meat with every meal. Free food and lodging. In this world, a good conscience doesn't buy loyalty, but a full stomach does. The way they look at me has changed. It went from initial contempt to absolute reverence.
In their eyes?
I, this impossibly young shopkeeper, hide a heart harder than cast iron and sharper than a fox beneath my skin. On the day the shop opened, I publicly snapped a crooked scale that shortchanged people. I laid down 4 unbreakable rules. The first rule is, the scale is our lifeline. When guiding rice and flour, we must load the bags until the scale tilts heavily in the customer's favor. Others called me a fool. People said I was cutting off my own livelihood, but I knew, in this cutthroat world of schemes and lies, honesty isn't some noble virtue. It's the deepest nail I've driven into this ground to claim my spot. I wanted everyone in this town to know. I have to say we are not. As long as the sign of no turning back is still lit, there is still one place in this world where honest people won't be pushed around. Having laid down the law in front of everyone, from then on, no customer was ever shortchanged in the shop again. Everyone in the neighborhood soon realized the owner of No Turning Back Grain and Oil was a truly honest person. Her products were good, her prices fair, and she had a good heart. Slowly, more and more people came to buy from her, and business grew better by the day. But Lin Jihu knew in her heart, she wasn't doing all this just to run a business. The 2 strong, burly men she hired weren't just there to move cargo either. She was waiting for Wang Jianjun to come back. She knew the money he took would run out eventually. He and that Mary were living it up out there. But once the money was gone, and the loan sharks were breathing down his neck, backed into a corner, with nowhere left to run, he would definitely come crawling back to her. He would come to make a scene, to demand money, and to dump his mess right on her. She had seen this coming all along, so she had prepared herself for everything, just waiting for him to walk right into her trap. The days rolled by, and in the blink of an eye, it was the 15th day since Wang Jinjun had left. Inside the shop, amidst the earthy aroma of grains and rice, the crisp click-clack of abacus beads rang out, one after another. Ling Sukor kept her head down, recording the accounts, her fingertips steady, without a single tremor. In cradle, little Lin Yan was fast asleep, breathing softly and evenly. The next second, the piece was violently shattered by a deafening crash. The heavy wooden door groaned as it slammed violently against the wall, startling the customers, who all spun around to look at the doorway, at the man who had been missing for 15 days. He stood there, looking like a rotting, walking corpse.
Rin Jinjun's eyes were bloodshot, mapping a frantic spiderweb of red veins.
He reeked of the sour stench of a filthy gambling den and the stale, rotten hive-over clinging to him. Behind him, Mary, caked in heavy makeup, had a face twisted with utter disgust. She was pressing a handkerchief tightly over her nose and mouth. Wang Yanjun's glare locked onto Ling Suhe like a venomous snake. A beastly growl rumbled deep in his throat as he lunged violently toward the counter. His roaring scream tore away any remaining shred of decency. Lin Suhe, you worthless bitch. You sold my house. You destroyed my goddamn home. Give me back my money. Hand over every single cent from that house sale right now, or I swear, I will kill you today. He tried to force his way behind the counter, reaching out aggressively to grab Lin Ziwell and lunging to snatch Lin Yan from her cradle. But before he could, 2 heavily built men stepped in, blocking him instantly. They cut him off from both sides, forming a human wall. With one firm shove, they sent Wang Zhang stumbling backward, until he collapsed, hard, onto the floor. Mary rushed over frantically to help him up. What do you think you're doing? She shrieked. Do you have any idea who he is? He is the shop owner's man. He is your boss's husband. You dare lay a finger on him. Are you trying to get fired? The 2 men stood before the counter, completely expressionless. They shielded Lin Suhe and Lin Yan like 2 immovable steel towers. They did not budge an inch. Our boss said. One of them boomed. She doesn't know this man. Anyone who causes trouble in this shop. Think. Ron Tangyun's face turned completely livid with rage. His hysterical roars echoed through the grain and oil shop. He screamed, demanding to know if I had anticipated all of this. He demanding to know if I had hired these men specifically to wait for him. I didn't say a word. I just slowly raised my head. The 10 in my hand came to a steady halt. I looked at him the way one would scrutinize a complete stranger. There was no hatred in my eyes, only the cold detachment of someone who had seen right through a rotting facade. I quietly pulled a sheet of paper out of the drawer. With a gentle flick of my finger, I slid it to the edge of the counter. It was a divorce agreement. Black ink on white paper. Every single word cut like a knife. Upon divorce, our daughter Lin Yan goes to me. He voluntarily waives all custody rights and will take on all the loan shark debts alone. He leaves with absolutely nothing. From this day on, we are completely cut off. Life or death. We have nothing to do with each other anymore. At the very bottom of the agreement, I had already signed my name and pressed down my thumbprint. A bright, blood-red mark of absolute finality. Wang Tianjin stared at the paper. The fury in his eyes was instantly replaced by the sheer horror of the debt numbers. He looked like a puppet whose spine had been ripped out, slumping there, unable to make a sound for a long time. He probably never expected that in this game of cat and mouse, he was the one who had walked straight into the trap. The prey I was about to completely destroy. In his mind, Lin Yu here was always just a submissive, easily bullied woman. Quiet, soft-tempered, and always doing exactly what she was told. He thought that after he ran off with the money, leaving the mess to her, she would definitely break down and cry, begging others to find him, begging him to come back. He thought that since she had just had a baby, she couldn't survive without a man, couldn't live without this home. He thought that once his money ran out and he came back to her, she would definitely cry and forgive him, help him pay off his debts, and keep living with him. He had even planned out the whole thing. Once she cleared all his debts, he would dump that merry woman and come back to be the king of this household again. But he never, in his wildest dreams, expected that during the 15 days he was gone, Ling Suhu didn't shed a single tear. She didn't make a scene, and she didn't beg. Instead, step by step, she cut off every single one of his escape routes, kicked him completely out of this old family house, even had the divorce papers ready and waiting for him.
Wang Jianjun finally snapped out of his daze.
He was trembling with pure rage. He snatched up the divorce papers and tore them to shreds. You want a divorce, Lin Yusha? In your dreams. Let me tell you something. I am not divorcing you. You are my wife. Your money is my money. Your shop is my shop. And you must hand over all the money from selling your house to me. If you don't, I'll come here and make a scene every single day. I'll make sure you can't even run this shop. And I'll take Lin Yan away from you. Let's see what you can do about that. Let's see what you can do about that. He howled inside the shop like a rabid dog. The customers in the shop were terrified and scrambled to get out. Ling Xiu, Xinchun, her eyes turning ice cold. She had already expected him to act like this. A dog will never change its filthy ways. A gambler will never admit they're wrong. She slowly rose to her feet,
Holding Lin Yan, who had just woken up, in her arms as she glared at Wang Junjun.
Sticking forward by word, she said, "我要尊重."
Did you think I was being too nice to you? Did you really think all I prepared was a divorce agreement? Did you honestly think that all the vile things you did, I wouldn't have any solid evidence? What evidence could you possibly have? Stop dreaming. Lin Sukyu didn't waste another breath on him. She slowly reached into the deepest corner of the drawer and pulled out a cold, hard, black voice recorder. Her finger pressed the play button, and the silence of the grain and oil shop was instantly shattered by Wang Zhenjun's greedy, grating laughter. It was a recording from late one night, 6 months ago. In the recording, he was bragging loudly to his gambling buddies, boasting that he had already gambled away every single cent of the money from selling the Lin family's ancestral home. He said that once that money-losing brat, Lin Yan, was born, he would run off with the remaining cash and marry, far away. As for the mess left behind, he spat in disdain with complete indifference, saying he would leave it all for that stupid woman, Lin Zucare, to shoulder. Every single word in the recording felt like a series of sharp, stinging slaps, stabbing hard into Wang Jingjun's instantly pale face. Heavy beads of cold sweat began to crawl down his temples. He stared daggers at the voice recorder, the pupils trembling with sheer terror. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect this. While he was busy dreaming of running off with all the money, I had already been watching him coldly from the shadows for 6 whole months. Without a shred of emotion, I switched off the recorder and hurled a stack of photos right at his face like a handful of sharp blades. Scattered across them were IOUs covered in blood-red thumbprints, filthy transaction receipts from the casino, and check-in records of him and that other woman, under the dim lights of a cheap motel. The evidence was absolute and ironclad. Every single piece was a death warrant he had signed for himself. It was as if the bones had been ripped clean out of Wang Zhenjun's legs. With a heavy thud, he collapsed to the floor like a spineless coward. He finally realized in this high-stakes game of betrayal and revenge. From the very first second he stepped foot inside that casino, he had already lost absolutely everything. There was no coming back from this. Every move he so carefully plotted,
Ling Ju had seen right through it all along.
he thought he was the hunter. But he had no idea he was actually the prey, walking straight into the trap. Ling Xiuhe looked down at him, her voice ice cold.
Wan Zhenju.
I'm going to ask you one last time. Are you going to divorce me? That's divine. Or not. Well, if you sign the divorce papers now, we can end this cleanly. You'll pay off your own debts, and they won't have a damn thing to do with me. But if you refuse to sign, that's fine too. I'll take all of these recordings and every bit of this evidence and hand them straight over to the Sangyang Town Police Station right now. With your history of illegal gambling, I'm running from loan sharks. Well, you can imagine what your life is going to look like behind bars.
王那君司的佛神，
Trembling from head to toe, Mary, who was cowering behind him, realized things had gone horribly wrong. Terrified of getting dragged into the mess, she quietly turned around and bolted. She didn't even look back. Once, watching Mary run away, Wan Jinju, completely panicked. He looked at Ling Su, a flicker of genuine fear finally showing in his eyes. He fell to his knees on the ground with a heavy thud, repeatedly kowtowing to Ling Xiuhe.
修慧，Honey,
I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please, just forgive me this once, okay? I'll never gamble again. I'll never mess around with other women again. I'll be a good husband to you. I'll love you properly. I'll make money and support the family. Just give me one more chance. He sobbed while slamming his head against the ground, tears and snot streaming down his face. He looked utterly, pitifully miserable. Everyone in the shop watched the scene unfold, whispering and murmuring among themselves. Some soft-hearted onlookers tried to persuade Lin Xiuhe, saying, after all, a husband and wife share a deep bond. He knows he messed up. Just forgive him.
But Ling Ju 和 just 怒掉的你的王家俊。
Her gaze unwavering. She knew this man all too well. His begging now wasn't because he felt genuine remorse. It was because he was terrified and had nowhere left to run. Ling Xiuhe looked down from above at the man begging on his knees in front of the counter. Without a single shred of pity in her eyes, only a dead silence, cold as a deep winter pond, she spoke. Every word like a knife, ruthlessly slicing through all of Wan Jinjun's delusions.
愿将中也是体累。
It was too late the moment I personally burned all your old junk. It was too late the moment I had your household registration permanently removed from the Lin family. And from the very second I named this shop, no turning back. There was never going to be a way back for my life. She spoke every single word incredibly slowly, as if reading out a final, irreversible verdict. With that, Lin Xiuhe didn't spare him another glance, and sat right back down behind the counter. With a steady hand, she dialed the Sangyan Town Police Station. Staring at the cold, clinical dial pad, Wan Zhenqing went into a total panic. His hypocritical facade shattered in an instant. He scrambled up from the ground, fleeing out the door like a beaten dog. As he fled in utter disgrace, he looked back, screaming desperate, empty threats. Yelling that he would ruin her reputation, that he'd come back to harass her every single day and make sure her business went under. Ling Xiuhe listened to the mad dog's barks fading into the distance. She didn't even blink. What he would say. So, what he would do. It was all exactly as she had anticipated. Since he refused to turn back, it was finally time to reel in the net she had so carefully laid. Sure enough, from that day on, Wan Jinjun came every single day to the no turning back grain and oil shop to make a scene. He wouldn't step foot inside, choosing instead to stand at the entrance, hurling abuse. He trashed Lin Xiuhe to every single passerby, claiming she had cheated on him, totaled out his money, and was utterly ruthless. Gigging her own husband out of the house right after giving birth, he spun these nasty lies with such vivid detail that they sounded real. At first, some gullible onlookers actually believed his sob story, pointing and whispering at the no turning back shop. Naturally, business took a hit. The staff she hired were absolutely furious. They wanted to go out there and drag Wan Jinju away themselves. But Lin Xiu had them back. Just ignore him, she said calmly. He'll stop once he gets tired of making a fool of himself. She went about her days in total calm, opening her shop and running her business as usual. She weighed rice and flour for her customers, personally handled deliveries, and completely tuned out Wan Jinjun's non-stop screaming. Besides, the The neighbors had known Lin Suhe for a long time. He knew exactly what kind of person she was. Honest, kind, and incredibly reliable. Word eventually got out about what Wang Zhenjun had done. They learned he was a degenerate gambler who had squandered his family's life savings and abandoned his own wife and newborn child. As time went on, everyone finally saw right through him. Wang Zhenjun was nothing but a complete scumbag. He ruined his own life. Yet he had the nerve to slander his own wife? You filthy gambler! How dare you show your face and harass Sue? Do you know how hard it is for her to raise her daughter and run a business all on her own? You gambled away every single penny and ran off. And now you have the nerve to crawl back? Get lost. If you don't leave right now, we're calling the police. Wang Zhenjun was utterly humiliated by the scolding, but he still refused to give up. He kept coming back day after day to make a scene, finding every disgusting way possible to make her life miserable. He even ran to her family's home in Sanyang Village to cause trouble, blocking the doorway of Lin Shui and Ling Yuing's house. He wailed and screamed at the top of his lungs.
故意的酒海，我能来份细细的道着。林你，
He lied that she had run off with all his money, and she was forcing a divorce on him and locking him out of his own home. But Juther had already seen this coming. Before selling the house, she had made a special trip back to her parents' place to sit down with Lin Shui.
安为诱，也爱个平隐，营死勿小，韩品。
The pale winter sun cast long, cold shadows into the Lin family's living room. Ling Sluker spoke in a quiet, calm voice, but every word was like a rusty nail driven straight into her parents' hearts. The gambling, the loan sharks, and the other woman he kept hidden in the shadows. What Wang Zhenjun had torn to shreds wasn't just their marriage vow, but the entire Lin family's dignity. Ling Xiaoyi shook with pure rage as he listened. His heavily calloused hands gripped the edge of the old wooden table so hard that his knuckles turned a terrifying, deathly white. Suddenly, he grabbed a heavy wooden carrying pole from the corner. A low growl of repressed rage escaped his throat as he lunged for the door, ready to rip that bastard apart. Xu Hel stepped forward in a flash, blocking the door with everything she had. Her eyes were colder than the winter snow. Dad, she said, killing him isn't worth it. I don't want blood for blood. I want to make sure that on the dead-end road he's walking, he will never find a single stepping stone to save himself. She had set up an empty fort strategy. From this moment on, the Lin family would act as if Lin Simel was gone, no matter how much trouble Wang Jingzhun tried to stir up, or how pathetically he begged on his knees. All the Lin family had to do was repeat one thing over and over. Lin Suque had cut ties with them a long time ago. Whether she was dead or alive, they had no idea. Looking at her daughter's gaunt face, Lin Yuing felt a sharp pang in her heart. Tears finally spilled over, running down her cheeks and dripping onto her coarse cotton jacket. Her heart bled for all the pain and misery her daughter had been forced to endure. But she was even more struck by her daughter's fierce, burning resolve to burn all her bridges. Through her tears, she nodded. It was the ultimate show of a mother's quiet strength. Don't you worry, my sweet girl, she whispered. The Lin family will always have your back. We will never, ever let you down. When Wang Qing kicked open that weathered wooden door, looking like a desperate beaten dog, he actually thought he was grasping at his last lifesaver. Little did he know, he was facing nothing but a freezing cold, an utterly impenetrable, empty fortress. You still have the nerve to show your face here and cause trouble? My daughter cut ties with us a long time ago. If you ever dare step foot here and act like a maniac again, I will personally break your legs. Lin Yang stood right at the doorway, pointing her finger and screaming at him. She aired out every single dirty, disgusting thing he had ever done for everyone to hear. The passing villagers of Shangyang village all stopped, pointing and whispering in disgust at Wang Zhenjun. Scolded to a pulp, Wang Zhenjun couldn't even lift his head in shame. All he could do was tuck his tail and run. With that, his very last escape route was completely dead. Left with absolutely no choice, a desperate Wang Zhenjun resorted to loitering outside the no-turning-back grain and oil shop every single day, trying every trick in the book to cause trouble. He was hell-bent on forcing Ling Suhe to cave. Staring at him, Ling Suhu finally ran completely out of patience. He knew that trying to reason with a parasite like him was completely useless. The only way to deal with his kind was to make him pay a price so heavy that he would finally learn what fear feels like. That day, Wang Jin showed up at her shop door to cause another scene. He brought a megaphone, blaring his mouth off so loudly that the entire street could hear him. Without wasting another second, Ling Su-health whipped out her phone and called the police. At the same time, she handed over every single piece of evidence she had, the voice recordings, the IOUs, and all the photos, straight to Xinguo Shang. Samguocheng. He actually had his eyes on Wang Zhenjun for a long time,
The man was a chronic gambler.
who owed a massive fortune to loan sharks. He had been on the police's radar for months. And now, with this ironclad evidence in hand, Sun Guochang didn't hesitate for a second. He cuffs Wang Zhongshu right then and there, dragging him away while he was still screaming in front of the shop. When Wang Xinjun was being dragged away, he was still screaming, cursing and thrashing. But no matter how much of a scene he made, it was completely useless. The evidence against him was ironclad. There was absolutely no way out for him. But what he expected even less was that the moment Sun Guochang dragged him out, the loan sharks immediately showed up at his doorstep. They had been looking for Wang Jinjun everywhere and were already desperate and seeing red. Now that they knew he had been arrested, they were determined to squeeze him dry. It didn't take long for the final verdict to come down. For his chronic gambling and refusing to repay his massive debts to the loan sharks, his charges piled up. He was sentenced to prison and thrown behind bars. Every single penny of his gambling debts and loans had to be paid by him alone. They had absolutely nothing to do with Len Suka. It wasn't until the heavy iron door slammed shut that Wang Zhenchun finally realized he had lost everything, completely and utterly. He thought he was the one playing Lin Siho, pulling the strings on everyone else, but he never expected that she had seen right through him from the very beginning. Every single move he made was playing right into her hands. He had personally cut off his own escape routes and walked right into his own prison cell. Meanwhile, Ling Xi's life only got better and better.
With Wang Shenzhen along the way.
There was no one left to cause trouble at her shop. The locals trusted Xu He more than ever and flocked to her store as loyal, lifelong customers. Her small grain and oil business began to skyrocket. What started as a tiny stall gradually transformed into the most famous grain and oil store in the entire county. Ling Suhe went on to open 3 new branches in the neighboring towns, hiring more staff and implementing a highly professional management system. She had officially become a well-known, successful female entrepreneur in the county. Holding little Minian tightly in her arms, the tears she had held back for so long finally spilled over. This was the very first time she had cried since giving birth. But these weren't tears of bitterness, nor were they tears of sorrow. It's pure relief and deep comfort. He's finally built a safe, stable home for himself and Lin Nan. He's finally become the man he always wanted to be.